The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago. I was rushing to catch the 5:47 train home, my umbrella fighting against the October wind, when I saw him. A man in a wheelchair, completely soaked, stuck at the corner of Madison and LaSalle. His wheel was caught in a pothole that had filled with water, and he was struggling to free himself. What shocked me wasn't that he needed help. What shocked me was the stream of people walking past him like he was invisible. Businessmen in expensive suits stepped around him. Women in designer heels carefully navigated past his wheelchair. Everyone was looking at their phones, their umbrellas tilted to avoid even seeing him. I stopped. In that moment, I made a decision that would change my life forever. Because when I helped that man in the wheelchair, when everyone else did nothing, he spoke in my ear. And what he said still haunts me 3 years later. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 58 years old, a corporate attorney who's spent 30 years believing I understood how the world works. But that confession, whispered in the rain by a stranger I thought I was helping, shattered everything I thought I knew about wealth, power, and the invisible people among us. Have you ever walked past someone who needed help? Be honest, we all have. But this time, something made me stop. The man appeared to be in his 70s, thin, wearing a veteran's cap that was so soaked it was plastered to his head. His hands were red from the cold, gripping the wheels of his chair as he tried to rock himself free from the pothole. The wheelchair looked old, one of those manual ones that required real strength to operate, especially in conditions like these. "Sir, let me help you," I said. Putting my briefcase down on the wet sidewalk, he looked up at me, and I'll never forget his eyes. They were the bluest I'd ever seen, like looking at the ocean during a storm. Clear, sharp, intelligent. Not the eyes of someone who needed pity. Everyone else kept walking, he said. His voice stronger than I expected. "Well, I'm not everyone else," I replied, moving behind his wheelchair. That's when he said it. The first thing that made me realize this wasn't a chance encounter. "No, Sarah, you're not." He knew my name. I hadn't told him my name. I froze for a moment, my hands on the handles of his wheelchair. How did he know who I was? But the rain was getting heavier, and he was shivering. So I pushed my concern aside and focused on getting him out of that pothole. It took some effort, but I managed to free the wheel. I expected him to thank me and wheel himself away, but instead he gestured to the coffee shop across the street. "Buy me a coffee," he said. It wasn't a question. "I need to tell you something." A confession. What would you have done? Would you have walked away, unsettled by him knowing your name? Or would curiosity have won, like it did with me? I agreed. We crossed the street together, me pushing his wheelchair through the puddles, both of us soaked to the bone. The coffee shop was one of those generic chains, fluorescent lights making everyone look slightly ill. But it was warm and dry. I bought 2 coffees and sat across from him at a small table by the window. Outside, the people continued to rush past, umbrellas bumping into each other, everyone in their own world. "You don't remember me," he said, wrapping his hands around the hot cup. I studied his face. Nothing familiar about it. Should I? February 15th, 1994, the Carmichael case. My blood ran cold. The Carmichael case was my first big win as a young attorney. I'd represented Carmichael Industries in a lawsuit. They'd been accused of dumping chemicals that contaminated the water supply of a small town. I'd won the case on a technicality, getting crucial evidence thrown out. "You were brilliant," the man continued. 28 years old, fresh out of Harvard Law, and you destroyed our case like it was nothing. The judge ruled in Carmichael's favor. The company saved $40 million. Our case? I whispered. I lived in that town, Sarah, Riverside, population 3,847. My daughter was 7 years old when she started getting sick. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong at first. By the time they traced it to the water, it was too late. Leukemia. She died 3 months before her 10th birthday. My coffee cup shook in my hands. I was just doing my job. I didn't know, didn't you? His blue eyes never left mine. You had the evidence. You knew what was in that water. You knew what Carmichael Industries had done. But you also knew how to make it disappear in court. The coffee shop seemed to fade away. All I could hear was his voice and the rain against the windows. Her name was Emma, he continued. She wanted to be a teacher. She used to line up her stuffed animals and teach them math. Even when she was in the hospital, hooked up to machines, she was teaching the teddy bear I brought her about fractions. Tears were running down my face now. In 30 years of practicing law, I'd never once cried about a case. They were just cases, just work, just winning and losing. But that's not my confession, he said. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and showed me a photograph. A little girl with the same striking blue eyes, smiling beside a Christmas tree. After Emma died, my wife couldn't take it. She left, blamed me for not fighting harder, for not being able to afford better lawyers. I lost everything. My family, my home, my will to live. I started drinking. Within 2 years, I was on the streets. Do you know what it's like to realize you were the villain in someone else's story? That your success was built on someone else's tragedy? One night, drunk and desperate, I decided to end it. I had a gun. Stolen, of course. I sat in an alley off Michigan Avenue, ready to pull the trigger. But then I heard something. A woman being attacked. 2 men had cornered her behind a dumpster. He paused, sipping his coffee. I could have ignored it. Everyone else does. Just like all those people ignored me today. But something made me act. Maybe it was Emma's voice in my head, telling me to be brave. I scared them off with the gun. Didn't even have to fire it. The woman was terrified, crying, thanking me over and over. That was good of you, I managed to say. The woman's name was Jennifer Chen. Does that name mean anything to you? I shook my head. She's your daughter-in-law now. Married to your son, Michael. Mother of your grandchildren. The room spun. Jennifer, sweet Jennifer, who'd married my son 5 years ago. Who gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren. Who always said she owed her life to a guardian angel she met one night when she was in college. That was 2018, he continued. 6 years ago. I saved her life, Sarah. The man whose daughter you helped kill saved the woman who would become part of your family. Why are you telling me this? I whispered, because that's not my confession either. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, worn and yellowed with age. After I saved Jennifer, I started following your family. Not in a creepy way. I just needed to know who you all were. The woman who destroyed my life without ever knowing my name. I watched your son fall in love with the woman I'd saved. I watched them get married, have children. I watched you become a grandmother. The envelope sat between us on the table like a loaded weapon, and I planned my revenge. For years I planned it. I knew where you lived, where you worked, your routine. I knew you took the 5:47 train home every Tuesday and Thursday. I knew you'd be walking down Madison Street today in the rain. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought everyone in the coffee shop must be able to hear it. I wasn't stuck in that pothole. Sarah, I positioned myself there. I knew everyone else would walk past. It's what people do. But I also knew you wouldn't. You want to know how I knew? I nodded, unable to speak, because I've watched you for 6 years. You're not the same person who won the Carmichael case. Something changed you. Maybe it was becoming a grandmother. Maybe it was just age. But you help people now. Last month you gave a homeless woman your coat. 3 weeks ago you bought groceries for the elderly man who lives in your building. You don't even know I've been watching, but I have. What would you feel in that moment? Fear, anger, or something else entirely? So my confession is this, he said, pushing the envelope toward me. I came here today to destroy you. In this envelope is everything. Documents from the Carmichael case that were never supposed to see the light of day. Proof of what you knew and when you knew it. Emails between you and Carmichael's executives laughing about the small-town idiots who didn't know what hit them. Enough to destroy your career, your reputation, everything you've built. I stared at the envelope. My whole life balanced on its edge. But when you stopped to help me, when you were the only one who stopped, I realized something. Revenge wouldn't bring Emma back. It wouldn't undo the past. And destroying you would mean destroying the grandmother of the children whose mother I saved. The circle would just continue. He stood up, steadying himself on his wheelchair. So my real confession is this. I forgive you, Sarah, not because you deserve it, but because Emma would want me to. She always saw the good in people, even when there wasn't much to see. She would have stopped to help me today, just like you did. Wait, I said, standing up. The envelope, keep it, he said. Do with it what you will. Destroy it, turn yourself in, use it to help other towns like Riverside. I don't care anymore. I'm tired of carrying this weight. He started wheeling himself toward the door, then stopped and turned back to me. You asked why I'm telling you this. It's because everyone else did nothing, but you stopped. And in that moment, I saw Emma in you. Just for a second. The kindness she would have shown if she'd lived to be 58. What's your name? I called out as he reached the door. Thomas, he said. Thomas Green, though I doubt that matters now. He left me sitting there with the envelope and 2 cold cups of coffee. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds, casting everything in gold light. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Everything he'd said was there. Photos of documents, emails, proof of my knowledge about the contamination, proof that I'd known children were dying and had hidden it to win a case. My first big win, the case that had made my career. But there was something else in the envelope. A second photograph, newer than the first. It showed Thomas with a group of children at what looked like a community center. On the back, someone had written, Mr. Tom teaching math to the after-school kids. A hero. Have you ever held your entire life in your hands? Have you ever had to choose between who you were and who you could become? I sat in that coffee shop until it closed, staring at those documents. The barista had to ask me 3 times to leave. When I finally walked out, I knew what I had to do. The next day, I walked into the senior partner's office at my firm and resigned. I told him I needed to pursue other interests. He tried to convince me to stay, offered me more money, more prestigious cases. I just smiled and left. Then I went to the EPA and the Department of Justice. I turned over everything, not just what Thomas had given me, but everything I'd kept hidden for 30 years. Every case where I'd known the truth and buried it. Every time I'd chosen winning over justice, the story made national news. Top corporate attorney confesses to decades of environmental cover-ups. My reputation was destroyed. My colleagues distanced themselves. Some of my clients sued me. I lost almost everything I'd built, but here's the strange part. I found Thomas. It wasn't hard. He volunteered at a community center in Riverside, the same town where his daughter had died. He'd been going back there for years, teaching math to kids who couldn't afford tutors. He'd been living in a small apartment paid for by the VA, getting by on disability checks. When I showed up at the community center, he was in the middle of teaching fractions to a group of 3rd graders. He saw me through the window, but didn't stop his lesson. I waited. Why are you here? He asked when the kids had gone. To help? I said. I don't need your help. No, but they do. I gestured to the empty classroom. These kids, this town, let me help. That was 3 years ago. Today, the Riverside Community Learning Center has 15 full-time teachers, all paid for by the settlement money from the lawsuits against Carmichael Industries and the other companies I'd helped. We provide free tutoring, after-school programs, and college prep for kids whose families can't afford it. Thomas and I work there together. He still teaches math. I teach a course on environmental law, showing kids how to fight for their communities legally. How to be better than I was. My son Michael doesn't understand why I gave up everything. My former colleagues think I had a breakdown. But Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, she understands. She met Thomas last Christmas. When she realized who he was, what he'd done for her, she cried for an hour. He saved my life, she kept saying. And then he saved yours too, in a different way. She was right. When Thomas made his confession in that coffee shop, when he told me he'd planned revenge but chose forgiveness, he saved me from continuing to be someone I couldn't live with anymore. But there's one more part to this confession, the part that haunts me the most. Last month, Thomas's health took a turn. The years on the streets, the drinking after Emma's death, they'd taken their toll. He's in a wheelchair full-time now, not by choice, but by necessity. His kidneys are failing. He needs a transplant. I got tested. I'm a match. The surgery is next week. There's a risk, of course. At my age, donating a kidney isn't simple. My family is worried. Some of them are angry. Why would I risk my life for the man who stalked me, who planned to destroy me? But they don't understand. Thomas didn't stalk me. He studied me. He didn't plan to destroy me. He planned to reveal me. And in the end, he chose mercy over justice, forgiveness over revenge. How can I do anything less? The truth is, when I saw him that day in the rain, stuck in that pothole while everyone walked past, I didn't just see a man who needed help. I saw all the people I'd walked past in my life, all the victims of the companies I'd defended, all the Emmas whose deaths I'd made legally acceptable. And when he spoke in my ear, when he told me his confession, he gave me the chance to make my own. So here it is. My confession. I spent 30 years helping corporations poison communities, and I knew it. I won cases that let children die, and I celebrated those wins. I was brilliant at being terrible, but one rainy Tuesday, a man in a wheelchair changed everything. Not through revenge, but through grace. Not through destruction, but through the simple act of forgiveness. Everyone else did nothing that day. They walked past him like he was invisible, but he wasn't invisible. He was Thomas Green, father of Emma, teacher of mathematics, saver of lives, and the man who taught me that it's never too late to stop being the villain in someone else's story. The surgery is in 6 days. If you're reading this, and I don't make it, know that I'm not doing this out of guilt. I'm doing it out of gratitude. Thomas gave me something worth more than any case I ever won. The chance to make things right, and if I do make it, if we both survive this, then we'll keep teaching those kids in Riverside. We'll keep fighting for the communities that corporations consider expendable. We'll keep proving that everyone else doing nothing doesn't mean you have to do nothing too. That's what Thomas whispered in my ear that day. His real confession. I could have destroyed you, but I chose to save you instead. Just like you chose to save me from that pothole. That's how we break the cycle, Sarah, one choice at a time. What would you have done? If the person whose life you'd destroyed had the power to destroy yours, but chose forgiveness instead, what would you do with that gift? I know what I'm doing. I'm giving him my kidney. I'm funding the learning center. I'm spending whatever time I have left trying to balance the scales. It won't bring Emma back. Nothing can do that. But maybe, just maybe, it will save another Emma. Maybe it will help another child whose water is being poisoned, whose community is being ignored, whose death would be legally acceptable. Thomas was right about one thing. Everyone else did nothing. But we don't have to be everyone else. The morning of the surgery, I visited Emma's grave. Thomas had told me where it was. A small headstone in Riverside Cemetery with an inscription, Emma Green. 1984-1994, forever teaching. I left a teddy bear there, unholding a small chalkboard with a fraction problem written on it. Thomas had told me it was her favorite. 1, 2, plus 1, 2. 1, 2 halves make a whole, she used to say. 2 halves make a whole. A man who lost everything, and a woman who had everything, but lost her soul. A victim and a perpetrator. Forgiveness and redemption. 2. They're making something whole. When I got to the hospital, Thomas was already being prepped for surgery. He looked smaller in the hospital gown, more fragile. But those blue eyes were still sharp, still clear. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do. It won't change what happened, no. But it might change what happens next. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak but warm. Emma would have liked you, he said. The you that you are now, not the you that you were then. Tell me about her, I said. Tell me everything. For the next hour, until they came to take us to surgery, Thomas told me about his daughter, how she loved butterflies and rainbow sprinklers, how she could multiply 3-digit numbers in her head by age 8, how she made up songs about fractions, how she wanted to be a teacher because everyone deserves to understand things. He told me about her last days, how even when she was too weak to sit up, she was still trying to teach the nurses about percentages. How she died holding his hand, telling him not to be sad because she'd learned everything she needed to know. She learned everything except how to grow up, he said. tears rolling down his face. The anesthesiologist came in then, ready to take us to surgery. As they wheeled Thomas away, he called out to me, "Sarah, that day in the rain, when I spoke in your ear, I almost told you different words. I almost said, 'You killed my daughter.' But then I heard Emma's voice clear as day, saying, 'Daddy, teach her something better.' So I did. They wheeled him through the doors, and I was left alone with the weight of that confession. A nurse came for me 20 minutes later. As I was being wheeled to the OR, I thought about all the people who had walked past Thomas that day in the rain, all the people who did nothing. I used to be one of them. For 30 years, I was one of them, but not anymore. The surgery was successful. We both survived. Thomas received my kidney, and it worked perfectly. The doctor said it was meant to be there, like our bodies recognized something in each other that made us compatible. During recovery, we were in adjacent rooms. The nurses, not knowing our history, commented on what good friends we must be. If only they knew that 3 years ago this man had planned to destroy me. If only they knew that 30 years ago I had destroyed him. But that's not who we are anymore. Thomas teaches full-time now, his health restored. He's even started a program where kids who've lost parents to corporate negligence get free tutoring for life. He calls it Emma's Legacy. I practice law again, but differently now. I represent communities against corporations. I make 1/10 of what I used to make, but I sleep through the night. My grandchildren, Emma's age when she died, come to the center sometimes. They love Mr. Tom, not knowing he once saved their mother's life, not knowing their grandmother once destroyed his. Last week, a reporter found out about us. She wanted to write a story about forgiveness, about redemption. Thomas and I sat together for the interview, side by side, no longer stalker and victim, no longer destroyer and destroyed, just two people who chose to stop the cycle. "Why did you forgive her?" the reporter asked Thomas. "Because everyone else did nothing," he said simply. "All those people walking past me that day, they did nothing. But Sarah stopped, and if she could stop for a stranger in a wheelchair, maybe she could stop destroying lives for corporations. Maybe she just needed someone to show her how. And you," the reporter turned to me, "why did you give up everything to help him?" "Because he spoke in my ear," I said. "He told me the truth about who I was and who I could be. Everyone else would have destroyed me with that truth, but Thomas used it to save me. How do you not give everything to someone who does that?" The article ran with the headline, "The Confession That Changed Everything, How a Man in a Wheelchair Saved His Enemy." But that's not quite right. Thomas didn't save his enemy. He eliminated his enemy by turning her into something else. Someone else? Someone Emma would have liked. The Learning Center is expanding now. We've received donations from all over the country, from people who've read our story, who understand that sometimes the greatest revenge is forgiveness, and the greatest justice is transformation. Thomas and I teach together sometimes. Team teaching classes about environmental justice. He explains the math of contamination, parts per million, statistical cancer clusters. I explain the law, how to fight, how to win the right way. Everyone else does nothing, we tell the kids. But you don't have to be everyone else. 3 months after the surgery, on what would have been Emma's 40th birthday, we held a celebration at the center. Not a sad memorial, but a real celebration. We had rainbow sprinklers on the lawn, butterflies in the garden, and math problems written in chalk on every sidewalk. Thomas gave a speech that day. He said, "My daughter died because everyone did nothing. The company poisoned the water, and everyone did nothing. The lawyers knew the truth, and everyone did nothing. The judge had doubts, and he did nothing. The town complained quietly, and we did nothing strong enough. Emma died because of all of our nothing. But then, one rainy day, someone did something. One person stopped while everyone else did nothing. And that small something became this." He gestured to the center, to the kids, to me. "This is what happens when we stop doing nothing." A little girl in the front row, about Emma's age when she died, raised her hand. "Mr. Tom, what if we're too small to do something?" Thomas knelt down to her level, his recovered strength evident in the smooth movement. Emma was small, he said, but she taught every nurse in that hospital about fractions. She was dying, but she was still teaching. You're never too small to do something. You're only too small if you do nothing. The girl nodded solemnly, then ran off to join the fraction treasure hunt we'd organized. I watched Thomas watch her go, and I saw Emma in his eyes. Not the sadness of her loss, but the joy of what her memory was creating. That night, after everyone had gone home, Thomas and I sat in the empty center, surrounded by children's artwork and math problems. "I have another confession," he said suddenly. My heart skipped. "After everything, what else could there be?" "I didn't save your daughter-in-law by accident," he said. "I was following you that night too. I knew Michael was proposing to her. I knew she'd be walking back to her car alone after celebrating with friends. I knew that area was dangerous. I stared at him. I positioned myself there, Sarah, just like I positioned myself in that pothole. I wanted to see if fate would give me a chance for revenge. And it did, just not the way I expected. When those men attacked her, I had a choice. Let your family suffer like mine had, or save her. For a split second, just a split second, I considered walking away, but you didn't. No, because I heard Emma again. Daddy be better, so I was better. I saved Jennifer not despite you having destroyed my family, but because of it. I wanted to prove that someone had to break the cycle. And you did. We did, he corrected. When you stopped in the rain, you broke it too. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of all our confessions between us. "There's one more thing," Thomas said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a silver necklace with a pendant, half of a heart, with the fraction 1-2 engraved on it. "Emma had the other half," he said. "She wore it always. It's buried with her. I've carried this half for 30 years, waiting to give it to someone who would understand that two halves make a whole. Someone who would help me finish what Emma started." I put on the necklace, feeling the weight of it against my chest. Half a heart, half a story. Half a life saved, and half a life redeemed. What do we do now? I asked. "We keep teaching," Thomas said. "We keep stopping when everyone else walks past. We keep choosing to do something when everyone else does nothing. We keep proving that confession without change is just noise, but confession with action is revolution." A year has passed since that day. The center now has branches in 3 states, all in towns affected by corporate contamination. We've helped pass 4 new environmental protection laws. We've trained over 100 young lawyers to fight the right way. But more importantly, we've taught thousands of kids that they don't have to be everyone else. They don't have to walk past. They don't have to do nothing. Last week, a young woman came to the center. She was 25, brilliant, fresh out of law school. She'd been offered a job at my old firm, defending corporations for more money than she'd ever dreamed of. "But I keep thinking about your story," she said, "about Thomas speaking in your ear, about choosing to stop when everyone else walks past. I don't want to be everyone else." She starts Monday, working for free, teaching kids about their legal rights, helping communities fight against contamination. She's the 17th lawyer to join us this year. All of them choosing something over nothing, all of them breaking the cycle. Thomas's health is stable now. My kidney works perfectly in his body, filtering toxins, keeping him alive to teach more kids, save more communities, forgive more enemies. Sometimes I put my hand on his side where my kidney lives now, and I think about how literal our metaphor became. 2 halves making a whole. But the real confession, the one that matters most, happened last month. I was walking to the train, same route I'd taken that day 3 years ago. It was raining again, that same October rain. And there, at the same corner, was another person in a wheelchair stuck in the same pothole. This time, it was a young woman, maybe 30, her chair electric but dead from the rain. And just like before, everyone was walking past. Businessmen with their umbrellas. Women in their designer heels. Everyone on their phones, everyone doing nothing. I stopped, of course. But what surprised me was who else stopped Jennifer, my daughter-in-law. She'd been walking the opposite direction, but saw the situation and immediately came to help. Then a teenager from the center recognized me and joined us. Then an elderly man who'd heard our story on the news. Then a businessman who said, "I walk past usually, but not today." Within minutes, we had 7 people helping this young woman. 7 people choosing something over nothing. As we freed her wheelchair and helped her to shelter, she said something that stopped my heart. "My daughter has leukemia from water contamination. We're suing the company responsible, but our lawyer says we don't have a chance. They have better lawyers, more money, more everything." Jennifer and I exchanged glances. "What's your lawyer's name?" I asked. She told me. It was someone from my old firm. Someone I'd trained. Someone who knew exactly how to make evidence disappear. "Come to the Riverside Community Learning Center tomorrow," I said. "Bring all your documents. We'll help you." "You're Sarah Mitchell," she said suddenly, recognizing me. "You're the lawyer who confessed. You and that man, Thomas. The one in the wheelchair, yes. Is it true, what they say about you two? That he forgave you for killing his daughter?" "It's true. How?" she asked, tears mixing with rain on her face. "How do you forgive something like that?" "You don't," I said. "You transform it. You take the worst thing that ever happened and turn it into the reason to make better things happen. You stop doing nothing and start doing everything. Her name is Monica. Her daughter is Lily, age 7, the same age Emma was when she got sick. The contamination is from a company I once defended, using tactics I taught them. The cycle trying to continue. But we're going to break it. Thomas and I, Jennifer and the lawyers at the center, we're going to fight this case the right way. We're going to save Lily if we can, and if we can't, we're going to make sure her death means something more than a legal victory for a corporation." Yesterday, Thomas met Lily. She was in her hospital bed, weak from chemo but alert. She had math homework she couldn't figure out. "I can help with that," Thomas said, and for the next hour he taught her fractions. At one point Lily said, "You're a good teacher. Did you learn from someone special?" "My daughter," Thomas said. "Her name was Emma. She taught me that everyone deserves to understand things." "Where is she?" "She died. From the same thing you're fighting." Lily reached out her small hand and took his weathered one. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be sorry," Thomas replied. "Be brave. Be brilliant. Be better than the nothing that everyone else does." Later, in the hospital corridor, Thomas made another confession. "When I saw her lying there, it was like seeing Emma all over again. The same eyes full of life, despite the body failing. The same determination to learn, even when learning seems pointless. I wanted to run. I wanted to never see that again, but you didn't run. No, because this time I'm not helpless. This time we know who poisoned the water. This time we have lawyers who'll fight the right way. This time maybe the story ends differently. And if it doesn't?" Thomas looked at me with those storm blue eyes. "Then we teach other Lilies, we save other Emmas, we keep transforming poison into purpose until there's no poison left to transform. The trial starts in 3 months. Monica's old lawyers have withdrawn, intimidated by the team we've assembled. The company has offered settlements, each one larger than the last. Monica has refused them all. I don't want their money," she said. "I want them to stop poisoning children. I want them to confess like Sarah did. I want them to transform. She won't get that, probably. Corporations don't transform. They calculate. But we'll get something. Justice, maybe. Change, hopefully. At the very least, we'll get the truth into the public record, where it can't be hidden by legal technicalities. And through it all, Thomas and I continue our strange partnership. The man whose daughter I helped kill, and the woman who saved him from a pothole. The victim who chose forgiveness, and the perpetrator who chose penance. 2 halves of a story that should have ended in destruction, but instead became construction, the reporter who interviewed us called last week. She's writing a book about us, about how confession can become transformation, about how the worst things that happen to us can become the best things we do for others. She asked what we want people to take from our story. Thomas answered that everyone else doing nothing doesn't mean you have to do nothing, that it's never too late to stop being the villain, that forgiveness isn't about the past, it's about the future. I answered that when someone speaks in your ear, when they tell you the truth about yourself, you have two choices. You can deny it and continue being who you were, or you can confess it and become who you should be. But the real answer, the one we couldn't quite articulate, is simpler. Stop walking past. Whatever it is, a man in a wheelchair in the rain, a community being poisoned, a child dying from corporate greed, a chance to do right instead of doing nothing. Stop walking past, because everyone else will do nothing. Everyone else will keep walking, umbrellas tilted, phones out, excuses ready. Everyone else will choose comfort over compassion, convenience over courage, but you don't have to be everyone else. You can be the one who stops. You can be the one who helps. You can be the one who listens when someone speaks in your ear, even if what they're saying destroys everything you thought you knew about yourself, especially if it does. That's my confession. I helped a man in a wheelchair on the street when everyone did nothing, and he spoke in my ear. He told me who I really was. A killer hiding behind legal briefs, a destroyer dressed in designer suits. But more importantly, he told me who I could become. And now, 3 years later, as I watch him teach Lily about fractions in her hospital bed, as I prepare to fight the case that might save her life using everything I learned from destroying Emma's, as I feel my kidney keeping him alive inside his body, I understand what he really whispered that day in the rain. He didn't whisper a confession. He whispered a resurrection. Mine, his, ours. The rain has stopped now. Outside the hospital window, I can see people rushing past. Everyone doing nothing. Everyone choosing blindness. But inside this room, a man who lost everything is teaching a girl who might lose everything that numbers are beautiful. That learning matters. That even when your body is failing, your mind can soar. What's half of infinity? Lily asks Thomas. Still infinity, he says. Some things don't get smaller when you divide them. They just become infinite in different ways, like forgiveness, like transformation, like the choice to stop.